overwhelm is, I think, really at its core is a lot of circumstances and feeling that you have no control over.
Okay.
And so when you're caught up in somebody else's drama or external circumstances or emotions that really you don't have a way to manage, that's the overwhelming feeling that tends to shut us down.
Welcome to the Focus on the Family broadcast, helping families thrive.
Ladies, welcome back to Focus on the Family.
Thanks so much.
We are thrilled to be here.
Yes.
Let's start with a word of hope. That might be the better direction because we're going to concentrate on a lot of things that are probably broken or feel broken. So let's start with that word of hope. Is it actually possible to not feel overwhelmed?
Well, okay, so maybe this doesn't sound super hopeful.
It's tripping you already.
I would say no, but I believe there's a game plan to get out from feeling overwhelmed.
So to help manage it better.
Right, because I think that overwhelm can come from anything from having to run extra errands that day to the illness of a parent. So you've got the whole gamut in between, but the feeling is overwhelmed. And so that rises up in a million different ways every day, every week, every month. But there are strategies to not live in that place of overwhelm.
Right.
Well, and so many women, I think the overwhelm becomes their identity. They don't say, I have overwhelming circumstances. They say, I am overwhelmed. And so that's the hope that we'd like to bring today and through our book, is that it's possible to go from I am overwhelmed to there are overwhelming things happening in my life, but I am not overwhelmed. I am at peace. I am free, and I have hope.
Well, let's start with the basics. What is the definition of being overwhelmed?
You know, the description in the dictionary is a description of a wave coming crashing over and turning you completely upside down. And when I speak on this, I use a slide of an enormous tsunami wave. And that's what it feels like, whether it's an external overwhelm because of the outside circumstances, or some of us, it's the internal overwhelm. We have huge emotions. I call it the emotion ocean coming up. But whatever it is, it feels like this force that is absolutely about to come over you and take over you and make it so that, I mean, if you've ever been tumbled in a wave in the ocean, you can't breathe. You're so disoriented, you don't even know which way is up.
See, and that may point to why I'm a sick person, because I love that. I love to be turned over in a wave in the ocean.
But you then have a much higher need for stimulation and
Yahoo!
take risk.
Let's do that again. At least that's true when I was younger.
Yeah.
But on the serious side, that is that perpetual sense of being overwhelmed. You're saying it becomes part of who you define yourself as.
And do you like that when it blindsides you?
No, of course not.
You like
It's
it when you choose it.
I'm choosing it. I'm in the ocean with my boys, and we're body
Exactly.
surfing, and we're in 8-foot waves, and it's kind of exhilarating and exciting.
And so you're on top of it, literally.
Correct. Well, yeah.
And overwhelm is, I think, really at its core is a lot of circumstances and feeling that you have no control over.
Okay.
And so when you're caught up in somebody else's drama or external circumstances or emotions that really you don't have a way to manage, that's the overwhelming feeling that tends to shut us down.
Now, you have also created in your book, Overwhelmed, a quiz that women can take to kind of help self-identify where you're at. In fact, we want to post that online with your permission. We'll do that.
Absolutely.
But get to the point of the quiz. What does that help you see in yourself?
The first quiz in the book, it helps them identify what kind of overwhelmed they are, whether it's decision fatigue, or maybe they don't know their true self, or they're not being true to themselves, doing too much for too many, with too little for too long, having unexpected emergencies, or being overwhelmed by worry and disappointment. I mean, that was one of the things that you realized early on, Kathy, was that overwhelmed takes on so many different facets.
What overwhelms Sherry doesn't overwhelm me.
Okay,
But
so it's individual.
Right. Yeah. But what overwhelms me, Sherry can handle with her hands tied behind her back.
In fact, I enjoy some of the things that overwhelm you.
Which is just... it's hard to be friends with somebody like that sometimes.
Oh,
Let's be honest.
that's the friend you need, though.
It is, and that's exactly why we're good friends, is because we can talk each other down. We can help unravel some of that. I think it is so valuable to have somebody in your life who can help you identify what your overwhelm is and really help you with a game plan.
So you would, if you felt overwhelmed, it's possible you would call Sherry and say, help me,
call, text, Facebook, message. Yeah, we do it all the time. If you look back at like our texting and stuff like that, We are constantly, I just was on a family vacation. I love my family. I love them to pieces. But there were a whole bunch of cries for help, cries for prayer. Sherry calls it processing. So it's processing through prayer, all of that. Because having somebody look from the outside and saying, I know it feels overwhelming, but here is your next step, is a huge, huge gift.
Now let's talk about those major personality types that you've uncovered. Describe each type and what overwhelms most women. Again, these things can fit with men as well, but let's go through the personality types.
So the first personality I'll talk about is the expressive, which is me. And I know we've talked about
You're
these
expressive.
here. I know. It's a shocker to everybody who knows me. And so we're the starters. We're the ones who love to get the ball rolling. We have ideas. We're innovative. But we also, when it comes to overwhelm, we have some really key issues that overwhelm us.
With an expressive, we become overwhelmed when life is no fun. And so we will start to add the fun to our life, and we'll start new things in addition to everything
Like
we
too
have.
many new things?
Oh, way too many.
Way too many.
Because all the things we already started have gotten boring
Or hard.
or hard.
And when it's hard, we don't like hard. Hard is hard.
So discard hard and move on to the next
Yeah,
fun
let's
thing.
do the new, because it's fun to start things, but it's hard to finish.
So how does that come when it's like paying bills?
Oh, I'm not allowed to pay bills in our house because both Roger and I would end up in prison. I mean, I just know that. And so it's good to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And it's great, how amazing is it that God often gives us somebody who is completely our opposite, which Roger is to me. He can make sure that bills get paid and we're not thrown out of our house. I make sure that we have a lot of fun in our relationship, and it's a good balance for us.
Okay, so that's the expressive. What's the next
Okay,
type?
so the analytic, and this is more of what my husband is. He's the one who makes sure the bills get paid on time, but there's definitely, for an analytic, I would say there's a process and a procedure to everything. And when those don't go according to plan, that can be really frustrating.
Yeah, the analytic becomes overwhelmed when life is imperfect. And almost always it's the people in their life that are causing the imperfections.
It's not the process, it's
No,
the
no.
people.
So that gives you a little feeling of what Jesus felt like, right?
goodness.
Everybody around me is not perfect.
Absolutely. And so they have a hard time making decisions because it has to be the perfect decision. And telling them to make a good enough decision, like their eyes will cross. That's a concept they can't understand. Good enough.
So how, let's, again, putting it in the context of the woman having that analytical gift, how does that work in the marriage? I mean, what do you do if you're married to a non-analytic and everything your husband's doing is irritating you because it's not perfect?
It's not perfect, yeah.
You know,
And-
I have so much compassion for this particular woman because in our society, the expressive is admired. We want them at the party.
Right.
But who wants the person who's busy going, oh, no, honey, that didn't happen on Thursday. That happened on Friday. Oh, no, it didn't happen at 2 o'clock. It happened at 2:07.
Are you saying there's something wrong with this?
I'm saying that person generally is not popular at the party. But when you think about it, this is the woman who gains her sense of peace from having her home look beautiful. This was my mother. And having everything in the right place makes her feel not overwhelmed.
Right.
And when she lives with a bunch of Philistines who could care less, she can get that house looking beautiful. Maybe she stays up till 2 a.m, and then what happens at 6 o'clock? The people wake up.
Right.
Yeah.
The
And they
imperfect people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they
Get all
ruin
mess.
everything because they don't care. And so, this is a hard position to be in. And I think, to answer your question, she needs to be really honest with her husband and say, this is important to me. Just like you having a good time at a party fills you up, these things fill me up.
And I think one of the biggest acts of service we can do to our fellow women is understand and recognize the strengths that they bring to the
Yes.
table.
Sure.
I am about as far from an analytic as you could possibly get. There is no scale for how far I am. But I so appreciate. And it's taken me years because I thought they were just fun quelchers. And what I've come to understand is I need those analytics in my life, and they need me. We need each other.
Well, and it's a great point, you and Roger particularly, because
Yeah.
you said he was more the analytic.
For
so
sure.
the early part of your marriage, what kind of conflict did this create?
Oh my goodness, I made him crazy. You know, to him, it's obvious when you take the toothpaste, lid off, you put it back. I'm
You're
like,
one
why
of
would you-
those? You and Jean. Oh, no.
Why would you do that? Because you just have to take it off again. That's the most basic example, but I know that it was frustrating for him to not do things in a particular way. But I come to understand I'm one of the most blessed women in the world because my bed is made every day. It's not made by me, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, you are blessed.
I am. And so understand when I learned to call out in Roger, thank you so much for taking care of the details because I know that's what makes our lives run.
Do you know how many wives' elbows just went into the ribs
Yeah.
of their husband
Yeah.
because of what you said?
Yeah.
I mean, ouch.
The bar
what
just
the-
got raised.
Yeah. He makes the bed, honey.
Well, but you know why he makes the bet? Because I appreciate that he makes the bet. When we look at, it's the same things that attract us to our spouse that make us crazy later on. And so when I came to understand, I do appreciate all this. I have to learn how to live with it, and I have to tell him how much I appreciate it.
Okay, we've only covered the expressive and the analytic. We got a couple more.
Okay.
But
Oh, yeah.
before you do that,
Yeah.
though, I wanted to ask this. When you realized this, did you begin naturally to create even work lists between each other? So you went to your strengths rather than your weaknesses?
We absolutely do. So one of the things I've learned is Roger doesn't want to feel like he is doing the bills by himself. He wants to feel like we're in a partnership. So he does the bills while I'm sitting in the room, like organizing papers and stuff. He just needs to know that there's a team member with him. But bills fall squarely in his bucket. And, we learned this in the kitchen. He is a master at getting the dishwasher loaded to maximum capacity. He has this figured out. I hate loading the dishwasher, so I do everything else, putting things away, cleaning the counters. When we understood that, we stopped fighting about cleaning the kitchen. It's such a magic key. The dishwasher overwhelms me. The kitchen overwhelms him. Why are we forcing ourselves to do things that overwhelm us when we have somebody who is so much more capable and can just sit in their gifts and do what they're supposed to
Okay,
do?
all right, let's go to the next one.
Drivers. Okay, drivers are the ones who want to get things done. They've got a plan, and even if they have to leave dead bodies in the road, they're going to achieve that plan. And a driver what overwhelms them is when life is out of control.
Yeah, drivers do not like surprises.
Yeah.
Because if there's going to be surprise, they want to be the one who actually causes the surprise to happen.
Okay.
A driver, you do not, spontaneity for them is like 3 weeks of planning. They do not like to
I'm
have these
thinking of some
surprises.
combos here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And then finally, the amiable. This is the person who just gets along with everybody. They're-
Finally.
Yes, I know. I know. We need amiables. They're the peacemakers, the peacekeepers. These are great people to have in your life. But the amiable becomes overwhelmed when life is filled with pressure from other people. That's a huge
So
issue.
is the amiable a people pleaser then?
They can tend towards, they can
Okay.
lean
Yeah.
in that direction. Their downfall is that they tend to make everybody else make the decisions for them. And they never express what they actually want. But at some point, all of
Yeah.
that becomes cumulative. And then they'll end up blowing up and saying, you never listen to me. You never do anything I want to. And everybody around them's going, when did you ever tell us what you wanted?
Okay.
When did you ever give us input?
So what should that wife do, particularly, again, talking in the context of women? If she's an amiable married to a non-amiable.
She needs to have a safe place to be able to say what she wants. And she needs to get brave and say, here's what I'd like. I'm willing to compromise. I'm willing to come to a consensus. But here is what I'd really like. And I think for the amiable, sometimes they still have to figure out what they really want.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a self-discovery process that they have to sit in and pray in.
Well, and I think a lot of women, they know what they need, but even the idea of saying, I will want. That feels so
That's
selfish.
a hard thing to say.
Yeah.
We are so culturally ingrained that self means ultimately selfish. And yet what I found with my husband, I'll dance around and never tell him what I need or want, and then I'll get mad at him when he doesn't do it. And he's a good man. If I would just say it in one sentence, I want this, most of the time he'll do it if I can say it clearly to him. But for me, it was years of coded communication. No, it wasn't really communication because he could never figure out what it was. And so I'm slowly, in the last few years, it's been part of the overwhelmed journey, learning to say, and it's hard. It's hard for me to find out for myself. And then, of course, if I don't know, how is he going to possibly know?
Sherry, I appreciate that, that knowing. But are you 10% better at that now, or 50% better in terms of expressing your desire to your husband so he clearly gets it? How often are you hitting it?
When I take the time, I'm one who has to take the time to be able to think, okay, what is going on right now? And in the past, what I would do is I would just immediately try to change what he was doing. Let me give a quick example. We were driving down for my father's remarriage, which was already a emotionally fraught event for me. And my husband wanted to take his car in to be washed. And so I offered to do it before we left, and he didn't want to do it that way. So I decided not to get into a big debate about it, but I was like, let me take it first. So I wanted to leave 20 minutes earlier.
Hey, I'm impressed you were ready to go, that you could go wash the car. That right there gets me.
Well, I was afraid we were going to leave late. And so I decided I'm not going to say anything. And I realized after we got there, what my real desire had nothing to do with the car. My real desire was to not be the one to drive the last leg of the trip. I was afraid that I was going to get stuck driving from 9 to 10 to 11 to midnight. And that did not turn into a big argument, but me realizing, hang on, I was talking about when to wash the car, when my real thing that I should have said is, hun, I'm really afraid that if you have me driving from 9 to midnight, I'll get into an accident because I totaled his other car a few months ago. And so for me to look at I'm talking about washing a car, but my real need is to not be driving at night. And so I'm trying to use that kind of as my template. Okay,
Right.
I'm asking him to change what he said he's going to do. What's my real desire? What's my real need here in this situation?
So you've hit the four: the expressive, the analytic, the driver, the amiable, all of them pretty self-disclosed. Lastly, though, you have a kind of a nuance for what you almost identify as another, but that's the highly sensitive person. But I guess that would apply to any of the four.
Yes,
but
for sure.
you possess that, Sherry.
Yes.
What does the highly sensitive person react like, and how does it fit with these other four?
The highly sensitive person, the first thing is they are very extra easily overwhelmed. And sometimes it can be emotionally overwhelmed. It could be sensorily overwhelmed. It might be the woman sitting in church and she can't concentrate because the drummer is beating the drums so loud. It might be the guy who can't concentrate because the woman sitting next to him, her perfume is just giving him a headache. And so they also tend to be very deep processors. Like you'll say something and forget it. 5 days later, they're still mulling over what you meant by that.
Yeah.
She remembers things that I said 3 years ago. I'm like, I said that, but she remembers.
I remember where we were when
Yeah,
she said
it's
it.
crazy. And so I'm a highly insensitive person apparently, but it's true that they have to chew on things for longer. They need to process longer. There's more.
When I learned about this, and I would go to a faculty meeting where they would want to bring something to an immediate vote, I started becoming the person to say, can we please have 24 hours? Can we please have 48 hours to think about this? Because I don't know what I think about something until I've had some time to process it. And usually it is 24 to 48 hours.
Well, and you talk about in your book the future you, to aim for that future you. And describe what you are getting at there, the future you. It sounds a little funny. But what are you aiming for? And then let me have a follow-up.
Well, it's talking about serving your future self. Who do I want to become? And so one of the tools we have in the book is a personal manifesto. And I love this. I've written out things, and Sherry has too, about who I am at my best self and who I want to become. And so things like, I love God, I love my people, and I love his people. I tell the truth, but I tell it with love. These are the things that I don't always do 100% of the time, but it's what my best self does. And so what I'm trying to do with God, directing me and guiding me, is to become the best version of myself in the future as I possibly can. I'm constantly working for that.
I would think that creating that future you perspective can be a little bit demoralizing at times. Let me just take an easy one. You know, I struggle with this as well, but if you look out a year, now we're in January, I'm sure many people have just set their New Year's goals, right? I'm going to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And this is a common one.
Yeah.
And you get to December at the end of this year going, I've actually put 5 on.
Yes.
But that wasn't my future you.
Right.
And now you're already disappointed, in a hole, recriminating yourself that you didn't do what you set out to do.
Yeah.
How do you not get trapped in that vicious cycle?
Okay, first of all, I think, you know, we have these goals, and I think goals are important, but they come second to who do we want to become. So instead of saying, I'm going to lose 20 pounds by the end of the year, I say, I have to earn health every single day. So what that means is today I need to go take a walk. It doesn't mean I need to go prep for a marathon, but today I need to spend a little bit of time going for a walk. I need to take care of myself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And so when you really see that a lot of this future stuff is really self-care, it really changes your perspective on it. It's not beating yourself up for those extra 5 pounds. It's saying, what can I do today to take really good care of myself? And today, all God is calling me to do is move my body, you know, to go out and take a walk and to go enjoy this whole great world that he's provided for me. And when you change that perspective, it seems so much more indulgent at first, but it's actually things you can stick with. What a concept. You could stick with going for a walk every day.
Well, I want to come back next time. We are out of time already, but I want to come back and talk about that, how you say no in certain circumstances, and then also God's joy and God's peace. How do we actually tap into that? Let's do that next time. And I want to turn to the listener, the woman who is going, oh my goodness, this is me. I am living this way. We want to put this resource in your hands. We want to help you. That's why Focus is here. Whether it's counseling, which we have gifted caring Christian counselors who can talk with you, and we want you to call if that's where you're at and you need that kind of help. We're here for you. If you want to get the copy of the resource and say, okay, I'm going to take the quiz. I'll go online, take the quiz, I'll get the book. Do that. All right, this is your last chance. What is something today, as a woman, and you've just pierced my heart for the last half hour, what is it today I can do that's really going to help me?
As a woman, I would say one of the first things you can do is take a look at your calendar and see what you're spending time on that you don't really value. I think a lot of times we've let other people decide our priorities. So what committees are you serving on that don't bring you joy? What is it that is you are dreading and you feel overwhelmed by? It's a hard decision to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it feels overwhelming to make that decision. But the freedom that comes after that, it's like Christmas. It really is.
Hey, I'm John Fuller, and thanks for watching. Get more info about Focus over here and more from our guests over there, and be sure to subscribe to our channel as well.